to be trading. All right. Anyway, let's get into the article. Again, the title, Millions of Americans Could Face Eviction as Housing Protection Expires in June. Okay. More than 11 million Americans are behind on their rent, and many of them could face eviction when the national housing protection expires in June. Housing advocates say the ban is lifting at a terrible time for property owners and tenants alike, with states still scrambling to distribute the $45 billion in rental assistance. Most at risk are people of color, with those with low incomes and older Americans. So it says the CDC had this eviction moratorium, which has been in effect since September. It's lifting on June 30th. It's an interesting month, not just because of this, but we also have that UFO report due out sometime this month as well. And I'll definitely be bringing that to you guys because I think the alien stuff is important. Although the policy has been far from perfect at keeping renters housed, it's reduced the normal number of eviction filings over the same period of time by at least half, according to Peter Hepburn, who's a scientist, a professor of sociology at Rutgers. Experts say the number of evictions could skyrocket when the ban lifts. Around 15% of adult renters are not current on their housing payments. Wow. So let me just give you my personal take on this. I've been paying rent. You guys know I'm a renter. I've been paying my rent. No one offered me any assistance. Not that I need it, knock on wood. But still, no one here in my building is not paying rent. This is a corporate building. They didn't offer anything. They didn't email anybody even when this whole thing started. So I think the corporate side of stuff, it's been a little bit tougher for you to like not pay rent, especially in Republican states like Florida, that this eviction thing did not last really at all. But if you live in a more liberal state where you're able to stay in your house and not pay rent, it's caused a lot of headaches for landlords, like private landlords, someone that I'm potentially looking to become. As me and Riley are diversifying our portfolio and growing our wealth, we want to get into real estate potentially. But one of the things that comes with that is, do you want to be a landlord? Do you want to deal with this situation where you have to kick tenants out sometimes? You have to call the sheriff. You got to hope that they pay their rent. And especially during this moratorium is what it's called, it's been very tough for these individual landlords to maintain their properties. Think about it. If the renter doesn't pay, and I know you guys know this, but if the renter doesn't pay their rent, how does the landlord pay the mortgage? How does the landlord pay the utilities? So part of this issue, and we'll get back into the article here, I think part of the issue is freeloaders. In every sense of it, you're going to always have freeloaders. So if you look at this map here, some of the states, it says the share of adult survey respondents in rental housing who reported being behind on their rent between April 14th and May 10th. A CBPP analysis estimates that 11 million American renters are not caught up. Florida has a very high percentage of people that are behind on rent. Some of the lower states, what is that, Maine, Utah, Kansas, South Dakota, Kentucky, but Georgia, South Carolina, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, California, Nevada, Louisiana, Arkansas, North Dakota, Alaska, these are where a lot of people are behind on rent. Let's see. The CDC's eviction moratorium has faced numerous legal challenges, and landlords have criticized the policy, saying they can't afford to house people for free. Yet housing advocates say the ban is lifting at a terrible time. With states scrambling to distribute the money, renters were given just $1.5 billion during the Great Recession, according to the National. Yeah. So we got $1.5 billion during the Great Recession in 2008, and this is $45 billion. 45 times as big, basically. We need to let the moratorium stay in place until we spend all the money, says Mark Melton, who's a lawyer who's been representing tenants facing eviction for free in Dallas. If you bail out the renter, that means you bailed out the landlord, he said. Heather Jordan has been approved for rental assistance in Missouri, but it could take weeks for the money to reach her landlord, who has already moved to evict her. If you've got the moratorium in place, it allows you the time to get the landlord paid. She fell behind on her $1,475 rent after she lost her sales job shortly before the pandemic. Her wife is disabled and can't work. If she and her family, including her wife, 2 children, and 2 grandchildren, are evicted from their house in St. Louis, they don't know where they'll go. Now, this is, I think, another part of like this whole situation that we have to talk about is just the homelessness, especially in California, especially in New York. All this is going to do potentially is lead to more homelessness. You know what I mean? And if you look at this chart, it says the share of adult survey respondents in rental housing who reported being behind on rent in that period between April 14th and May 10th, majority of people owe their landlord less than $35,000. But there's still people, 6%, that owe $75,000 or more. So you've got some wealthy people too that are not paying their rent. So I think it's just very interesting here. And it says According to one recent count, more than 100,000 people over the age of 65 say they expected to be evicted within the next 2 months. 100,000 people is a lot of homeless old people. And almost 450, almost half a million people, half a million renters are between the ages of 55 and 64, said the same. So it's not just 65-year-olds, it's even more 55 to 64-year-olds. And I think why we need to look at that specifically is because these are people who were told their whole life, save for retirement, save for retirement, save for retirement. You're going to live a good life, work hard, and then get to retirement. But now they're getting to that retirement age, and they're all realizing because of inflation and because they didn't invest properly, they don't have enough money to live. Now, on top of that, they don't have enough money to pay a really nice rent, right? And if they are paying a really nice rent, they're now potentially not paying that rent because they ain't making any money because of the pandemic, and now they're going to be evicted. So it's a really crappy situation for the older people. And I'm curious to know here, do you know anyone that's being impacted by this? Do you personally have any say in this argument? I want to know in the comments below because I'm interested to see how many of you guys have been paying your rent versus how many of you guys have been deferring. And I know there's going to be people that are listening that aren't going to comment, and those people maybe didn't pay their rent because they were able to finesse the system a little bit and still make money but not have to pay their rent. To me, those are freeloaders. You're a freeloader. We're trying to get the economy back and running. That is not the way to do it. So that's my take on the eviction moratorium that is expiring at the end of the month. Let's see what we got here. Mason says corporate evictions may get even worse as a lot of businesses will not be renewing leases due to working from home. Landlords may get more strict due to this. It's a great point. I think the work from home thing, just the whole pot, it's like a big stew. All of these things coming together make it a very tough time to buy a house for an investment purpose. It makes it a very tough time to buy a house and live in it if you are in an area like I am in Florida where it's super high demand. And then it makes it really tough to want to be a landlord. Like, how could you incentivize people to get into real estate through our tax code, which exists, but then at the same time put the handcuffs on them saying you can't kick people out if they're not paying rent? It's a very, very tough situation. Yeah, see, technical trader Gabe, I've been working and paying rent through the pandemic. You and me, bro. I mean, most of us should be trying to do that. And then there's the people that took free money from the government for unemployment reasons, but they were still working another job. I mean, just so many people taking advantage of the system, I think, is part of the problem that we have here in America. Like, people don't trust the government to do good for us, and therefore they take advantage of the system in every way that they can. But let's move forward from this eviction talk into another